Okay, so we are doing Mishlei 21, 29. We're actually almost done with chapter 21, but I don't think we're going to finish before Pesach. Not that it's a race or anything like that. Okay, so He'ez ish Rasha b'fanav v'yashar hu. Now we have here a kri and ksiv. Okay, Yavin Darko. I don't remember if we had a kri ksiv this year yet, so I'm just going to give the quick overview of how kri ksivs work in I guess Tanach and then in Mishlei in particular. So just quick review here. So first of all, what is a ksiv? So ksiv is when, or it's really ksiv apparently. So ksiv is when it's written in one way, and then is you read it in another way. So it's like a Torah Shabbal Peh on the Torah Shabbal that we have a Masorah that you're supposed to read it in a different way than it's written. Okay, so the best explanation I've found for how to interpret ksivs or how they came to be is the Abrabbanel. I think he says it in the Hakdama of Yirmiyahu. Okay, so he says basically that there are three categories of ksiv. Okay, one of them is when it is written that way to convey an idea. Okay, it could be an esoteric idea, it could be a like Torah Shabbal Peh idea, it could be just any other idea where you want to encompass some sort of dual meaning, so you write it in one way and then read it in another way. Okay, second, and that is in the Chumash. All right, Chumash and all of Tanach, but that's the one that you'll find in the Chumash. Second category is when there is a euphemism used, and what'll happen is it'll write it in the more explicit way, but then when you read it in a in the more euphemistic way. So the examples in the Chumash that come to my mind are, I think it's in one or both of the Tochachas when it says, you'll marry a woman and then ish acher yishgalena. So it's written yishgalena, which is a very like violent term for like raping, but you read it as yish kavena, and another man will lie with her, because we want to avoid saying like this bad term. Or I think there's another one also in the Tochacha where it says you'll get what is it? There's apolim and tochorim. One of them is like a gross term for like hemorrhoids, and the other one's like a more clean term or something like that. So there's a euphemism where we avoid saying what's written because of like what's the word? Propriety, for propriety's sake. And then the third one is the most controversial one. And that's also in the Chumash. So the first two are in the Chumash. The third one is the most controversial one, which is Abrabbanel says that in order to become a Navi or to get Ruach HaKodesh, you need certain types of perfections and you don't need other types of perfections. So you need, for example, perfection of intellect, you need high level of perfection of character, and be able to think, be able to communicate. But one of the perfections you don't need is you don't need to know how to write. Okay, so he says that if you look through the ksivs and the proportions of them in the various Sfarim, you'll find certain patterns. So, for example, in Sefer Yeshayahu, there are very few. In Yirmiyahu and Malachim and Eicha, there are a ton. Why? Because Yeshayahu got nevuah. Yeshayahu was royalty, and he has beautiful, flowing, poetic language. But Yirmiyahu was a kid when he became a Navi and didn't get a chance to like finish his education in terms of like writing. So he says you'll find many just blatant mistakes of like misconjugations of verbs, misspellings of words, misgendering. And so basically what happened was he wrote out his nevuah, and the content was of the most profound chachma, but he didn't know how to write. So what happened was, he wrote out all of his nevuahs, and then when the Anshe Knesset HaGedola finalized Tanach in the form that we have now, and they edited it, then they did all the spelling corrections, but because they didn't want to erase any actual written words, because it might be like containing a deep idea, they preserved the written version, and then they just made it into a ksiv. So you read it a different way, So that one is only found in Nach, not in Chumash, because in Chumash Moshe Rבינו got the Chumash word for word from Hashem, including all the letters. So again, three categories here. Either it's ksiv because there's some idea being taught there. Two is that it's a euphemism, and then three, which is only in Nach, is some sort of a misspelling or like typos or something like that the Anshe Knesset HaGedola corrected. So any questions on those three categories before we go into Mishlei?
Yeah.
Yeah, David.
Oh, okay. With that last category,
Yeah.
is that only going to be? Is it known like which sefarim lend themselves to and which ones don't, or it's just a general thing that could happen in any sefer and nach?
It could happen in any sefer and nach. The Brazenness did have a kind of a list of the again those three sefarim written by Yirmiyahu, Eicha, and then Malachim. He holds that those support his theory because Yirmiyahu was young and he wrote all three of them, and there are tons of Greek sivs. But I don't know beyond those sefarim if there are other sefarim that lend themselves more to that, especially because we don't have equal biographical info for the different neviim.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's what's funny is I'm always criticizing Alter for his willingness to like amend the manuscripts and stuff. I mean, there was a reality to that kind of thing, but that was really the Bali Masora were really in charge of that. So for all, I mean, I don't know how much they were involved in editing the manuscripts of Nach, throughout the ages.
Yeah, there's a huge difference between Alter and the object.
Yes, definitely, yeah. So in Mishlei, then I don't see that many people who comment on the ksivs except Rבינו Yona, and even he doesn't do it consistently. The way he usually takes it, if he does comment, is he takes it as two levels of meaning. That the kri is the shot of the pasuk, and then the ksiv is alluding to some other nuance or dimension of the idea. I can't remember if he ever reads it in a way where the ksiv is a different idea than the kri. Usually he learns that it's complementary. So our pasuk has two of them. Okay. So again, in brackets and in blue is the kri. That's going to be the main meaning according to Rבינו Yona. And then in the yellow is going to be the ksiv, which is going to be a nuance or some sort of other like allusion. Yeah, Isaac.
Yeah, I was just going to say about the fact, like the difference between Torah and Nach.
Yeah.
There's like another like implicit point that I think is really interesting, that Torah, the Chachma and like the words were like directly from Hashem.
Right.
Whereas Nevi'im, the Chachma and the content were from Hashem, but the words are like it's written from the Nevi'im are actually writing it themselves.
Correct. Yeah, and in fact, they're just to add to that point. Hopefully, you'll recognize this phrase from just the Haftorahs. But if you've learned Nevi'im, you'll see the phrase Ne'um Hashem a lot, which means like saith the Lord. So Rabbi Fox wrote a Devar Torah on that once, and I forgot who he quoted, but he said that was a reference to the fact. It's a reference to that idea that the Nevi'im were not getting their, all the other Nevi'im got their nevuahs in just visions, and then they wrote them and expressed them. So there are individualistic styles in all the Nevi'im, in terms of not just like not in just individual word choice, but I'm saying like just like every writer has their own style, then all the Nevi'im had their own style, and they're referencing that repeatedly by saying Ne'um Hashem. Because whereas you never see that in Chumash, you never see Moshe Rabbeinu saying Ne'um Hashem. I mean, you have Yom Hashem El Moshe, but like that's already speaking from Hashem's, from not Moshe's perspective. Yeah.
How does Ne'um Hashem reference that?
Well, the word Ne'um Hashem means, I think it literally just means said Hashem, but I don't remember the details of the Devar Torah. I'll post it in the chat if I can find it. Yeah. Okay. Any other thing on this before we translate the pasuk?
I'm good to get right in it.
Okay, so anyone want to stab at this? He'ez ish Rasha bifanav v'yashar hu yavin darko. It's a tough one to translate. Where's Azus? Brazenness. Yeah. So I have here in the Al Torah, it's from Azaz, is to be strong. So He'ez ish Rasha bifanav. So the wicked man is He'ez bifanav. How would you translate that?
I like brazen before him, but I feel like there'd be a different way to say that.
Yeah. Well, what does panav literally mean?
His face.
His face, yeah. So let's just say is brazen with his face, okay? Because I think that's the most literal translation. V'yashar hu
And he is straight.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I think the who goes on the Yavin and a Yashar. So Yashar is a Mishlei personality. Okay. You'll find most pasukim about the Yashar in chapter 11, which is what we're doing on Monday nights. And let's just translate him as the upright person. Okay. Yavin Darko.
Understands his ways.
Yeah. Understands his
paths.
Understands his way, singular. Okay.
Sure.
That's the ksiv. Or sorry, that's the kri. Okay, so that's understands his way. Okay. And then in the ksiv, it is יכין דרכיו, which is
prepares.
Yeah, prepares his ways. Okay.
That's
yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. So again, we're gonna focus on the in terms of like I advise us to ignore the yellow for our initial like foray into the idea and just try to understand the what do you call it? The blue, the Cree, because that's the way it's supposed to be. And then after we get the idea, we'll I mean, I'm not saying you should discount it totally, but like for all intents and purposes, don't equate them. Okay, like focus on the blue. Okay, so by the way, you have here in the Alator dictionary, they have our pasuk. They say a wicked man maketh firm with his face, or sheweth boldness with his face. I like sheweth. Okay, hold on just 1 second here. This never works. Okay, just delete this Alator thing. Oh, hold on just 1 second here. Sorry. Save. I forgot to save this in the other way. Save as analysis notes. Analysis notes. Okay. And then delete. Okay, there we go. All right. ציון says befanav. So he says befanav differently, or he adds something. Bikaso. Okay, so he says with his face in his anger. V'chein upaneha lo hayu la. Oh, sorry, I said hanger. That's funny. In his anger, right? And likewise, upaneha lo hayula, her face was not with her. Ki hakas nir b'fnei adam, because anger is revealed in the face of a person. Okay, so I guess he's just adding here that there is an implication of anger. I don't know if he's translating that or saying it's a connotation. Like in other words, I don't know if Hayes panav is something we literally translate as anger, or if it really just means he emboldens his face, and then the implication is anger. Okay, Sadigon has a very interpretive translation here. Im Hayes ha'adam harasha es panav, if a wicked man makes brazen his face, ro'i liyashar sheyavin es darko, it is fitting for an upright person to understand his way or path. Yeah. Okay. So that's Sadyagon. And then you tell me if you can spot what the Targum does. Okay. It's an interesting thing. Machatzef apoy gavra rashia utritza hu masakin orche. And tritza is just a straight translation for Yashar. So what do you notice he's doing? You don't need a ton of Aramaic to get this part.
He's saying that one who is Meis Panav is a Rasha.
Interesting. That is possible. Machatzef apoy gavra rashia. I'm not sure because I also don't know the conjugation of machatzef. Because it could just be the same way as in the Hebrew. A gavra rasha makes brazen his face.
Okay.
Oh, in fact, you know what? Actually, this might also be something different. Hold on. I got to look and see if apoy is face or if it might be okay. It might be that anpoi is face and afoy is off. So it could be that he's translating it as anger. Let's just see here. That's not what I was thinking of, but let's see. Afoy. Afoy is I'm not seeing it, which must mean I don't know how to look it up. Okay, I don't know. afa. I assume that's going to be afo, ofi. Okay, I'm not sure then. All right, but the part I was focusing on here. Anyone see it? So he takes the ksiv, misakein is yakhin, is like to prepare to fix. So he says but an upright person corrects his way. Yeah. All right, so I don't know why he ignores the kri. Okay, so we've got our English translations here. ArtScroll says a wicked person shows his audacity on his face, but the upright one considers his way. Okay, so he translates yavin as consider, not what I would usually translate havana or tefuna as. Living Nach says when angry, the wicked man is impudent, but an upright man understands his way. Okay, that's fairly close to what we said. And then Alter says a wicked man is brazen-faced, but the upright understands his own way. So that actually reveals a question that we have to ask here.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So let's just start off with that question. So the question there is, whose way does the Yashar understand? The way of the Ish Rasha or his own way? Right. And that's, I mean, what we're either, I mean, how are you guys reading it when up until now?
Seems more natural to say his own way, but I do see the other reading of.
Yeah. I was thinking, I was thinking the Rasha, because that's the subject of the pasuk, but I guess I could see it both ways. That's why I was kind of curious what your intuition was. So Sean's intuition was different than mine. Yeah. Okay, fine. So those are two ways to read it. Okay. So other questions.
That's the first question.
What's the relationship between Jericho and his face?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. So what is the relationship between Panav and Darko, which obviously that's going to how we answer that is going to hinge. Oh, what's going on here? Why is my computer displaying volume stuff? Just give me 1 second. Okay, there we go. The answer to question 2 will hinge on the answer to question number 1, whether we're talking about the face of the Yasha or the face of the Rasha. But either way, it's a question.
Also, why is this a Rasha?
Why is this a Rasha, did you say?
Yeah, like a Rasha that's like for me it seems strange that a Rasha is like so readable on his face.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So let's ask the basic question first. What does Rasha mean in this context? And then how is this characteristic of a Rasha? Right, you're saying that the Rasha would not, you would think of the Rasha is not so brazen on his face.
Yeah, I would assume so.
Yeah, I would also assume that a fool is going to be like much more prone to being showing it on his face, but reshaim have to be like, have to be cunning and conceal stuff, Is a Rasha really that readable? Yeah.
Can Bifanav and Darko be God? That the Rasha is brazen before God?
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, I'll bet someone would use that. Okay, so let's say, hold on just 1 second here. So let's actually make that into a separate question, which is, does Bifanav have to mean his face, or could it also mean in his presence? And if so, whose presence? Okay, right. The Yashar, God, or someone else. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it is interesting that, hold on. Yeah, I haven't seen anyone translate it that way before, but Bifanav, if I just show you the word Bifanav in isolation, you would think it's in his presence rather than his face. So that is a natural way to read it.
Yeah, another question.
Yeah.
There seems to be a lot of focus on, at the very least, the Rasha, the first half, a lot of focus on like appearances, like how he looks in, like how his appearance is, something like that, instead of actually more toward the action which I feel like would be generally the type of thing we talk more about than an appearance of something.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask this from a grammatical stand. Okay, well, all right, I'm gonna ask a question that your question brought to mind, but we can see if we need to list it as a separate question. Okay, what is implied by he'ez? Okay, I assume that he'ez is again, I'm not the most memory person, but I assume that that's in he feel, that he makes his face brazen. Okay, like in other words, what is implied by he'ez, i.e. the fact that the Rasha is making his face brazen. Okay, like what kind of action is that? And this is why I'm associating to your question, David. And why is that the only action, or what is implied by the fact that that's the only action he's doing? What is implied by the fact that that is the only action he is doing in the pasuk? In other words, you usually think of reshaim as engaging in action with their hands or action with their speech, some sort of like more actiony action. This is just like, with his face. So yeah. Does that capture the gist of your question, or your question was a different angle?
I think so. I mean, it also then brings to mind a different question.
Okay.
Did you have another question under this, or you didn't? Okay, yeah. Okay, so not what is implied by he'ez as much as what results from this.
Okay, yeah. What is the outcome?
Yeah.
Outcome, yeah, the outcome of he'ez Rasha bifanav. And it's interesting because you could read the second half of the pasuk as the outcome for the yashar, or at least the response of the yashar, but presumably there is an intended outcome that there's a reason why the Rasha is doing this, and then there's probably also some sort of consequence. I'm gonna just acknowledge that here. What does the Rasha intend with this, if anything? What is the consequence of him doing this?
Yeah. Also, what is the context of this happening?
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Is this something that he's always doing? It's something that happens sometimes.
Yeah. Of this pasuk. So, is this describing something like a perpetual quality of the Rasha? Does this only happen under specific circumstances? Yeah. It's funny. I get a okay. You don't have. I don't know. I'm just curious. Does anyone have any specific? Those of us who can think visually, does anyone have any specific imagery that, like a specific example of this that comes to mind as you're reading it, of he'ez ish Rasha b'fanav? I mean, it doesn't have to be visual, but like a specific image.
Haman.
Haman. I was also thinking Haman. I was also thinking Haman as yeah. Like I picture a Rasha not necessarily doing this l'chatchila, but doing it in response to a threat to his like rishus being actualized. So Haman would be a good example.
Yeah.
Do we just ask what Yavin means in this context?
No, we did not, and that is a good question. What does Yavin mean in this context? We should also ask does Yashar mean in this context?
And I think Darko too.
Yeah.
What do you say, Darko?
Yeah, have we asked that one? I don't think we did.
I don't think we did either. Yeah, you're right. What does Darko mean in this context? And then I'll just fold in the questions here. What if anything is implied by the ksiv of Drakhav? And then also here, what if anything is implied by the ksiv of Yakhin? And by the way, this is a good example, by the way, the Yakhin. This could easily just be an actual like scribal error. Like this could be the type of thing that Alter was talking about, where it's not that hard for a Bays to become a chaf, and then the Anshe Knesset Hagdolah had to like fix it because if this spelling had already taken root, but whatever.
Yeah. Are the two halves opposites, and if so, how?
Okay, good. I was waiting for someone to ask that question. So are the two halves opposites, and if so, how? Yeah, I feel like that's going to be a major question. And then I think here, you know what? Another question. For Yavin. Does this mean will or should? Right? Because in the future tense, or in the future, then it could be either one. And I think one of their English translations that we read had Saidigon says it is ro'oi liyashar sheyavin es darko. So he's saying it as like a tzivui, which is connected to the last. I don't know if it's the last question, but the question that we usually put last is who is the intended audience, and what is the practical application? So if this is if Yavin means should, if you read like Sadigon, then it's talking to a Yashar, seemingly. But if it's saying that the Yashar will do this, it's less clear who this is intended for.
Mm-hmm. I also don't think we asked why specifically the face. I know we said something related, but I don't think we asked specifically why it's a face.
Okay, yeah, you're right. So does that go under any one of?
It's similar to 5.
Yeah,
but it seems like a separate question at the same time.
Okay, sure. I'll put it here then. Why the focus on the fun of? Okay. Yeah. Okay, I feel like we're probably ready to start analyzing here. Yeah. So where do we begin? I mean, I feel like we have to begin with the first half because the second half is responding to the first half, right? I mean, like, if we don't know what the first half is talking about, then I feel like we're just going to be groping in the darkness here.
I have a thought for the first half, but I don't know if it works with the second half.
Okay, sure, go ahead.
I think there are times when Rasha is angry and he thinks it, and like he knows it would be best not to express it.
Mm-hmm.
But because of not exactly sure what about the lifestyle of Rasha, he doesn't have the degree of self-control that he can actually like not express it in any way.
Yeah. Okay. I was thinking exactly the same thing for the Rasha's Azus Panim, and this is a good answer to the okay, actually I'll let you attempt to answer this first. Can you explain why this is specifically a Rasha? Because a lot of people lack self-control. So like what's the
No, I don't have.
No, okay.
Actually, I'd say it's because the Rasha has foresight to some extent. He has like a plan, and so so he's not just like doing whatever feels good.
Yeah.
But because his goals are self-oriented, he doesn't have that like ability to like actually take that like the degree of perspective needed to not like express anger in some way.
Right. Yeah. So I'm just going to express in slightly different terms. I think we're saying the same thing. Is that the there are lots of people in Mishlei who lack self-control, but lack self-control for what? So for most Mishlei fools, the self-control is going to be some sort of taiva. Like pursuing a desire, or if you're in the case of the late, then like shooting someone down. So, but with the Rasha, it's more the Rasha has a plan or a vision that basically he wants to impose his entire self onto reality, and to make everything subordinate to his own vision of how reality should work with himself at the top. So it's going to be a much more like I don't want to use the word ambitious because it's much more than ambitious, but like he's trying to force reality to become something. Whereas the average fool is not doing that. The average fool is just trying to get something from reality. Rasha wants to mold reality in line with his own megalomaniacal self, you know. So when that's stopped up, when that hits an obstacle, it fundamentally like disturbs him, and he has to show it on his face. Like, again, I think the Haman is a good example of that. He wants everyone to acknowledge his superiority and greatness, and when that doesn't happen, it completely challenges his whole view of his place in the world, and thwarts his greatest, deepest ambitions. So like it's gonna, I still feel like I'm in the descriptive stage of this, but it's gonna have to manifest itself. Like you don't say no to a guy like if you say no to a guy like that, then it's, you know, it elicits a reaction that is like, he's like, you're trying to attack my very self, you know, whereas the average person is not going to have that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Can I take that a little further?
Sure.
I think the Rasha gets, right, as he's like manipulating and like infecting and controlling the system.
Yeah.
So then at a certain point, he starts to think, oh, I really am in charge of the system. Like I am the person who says how things go. But at a certain point, the system doesn't work according to his say-so, because it fundamentally can't. And so when that happens, so then there's like a rejection of the system of him, and that produces a sense of outrage.
Right. Okay, good. So a good depiction of that. Okay, this meme, it's not even a meme. It's okay. This is before your time, I guess. Anyone ever seen that scene? There's a movie about Hitler that takes place in the bunker. It might be called The Bunker, I'm not sure. In the last days of Hitler, when he was like losing his control. And the meme is that people make YouTube videos where they put a dub over it because he's speaking entirely in German, and it ends up being really funny. Anyone know what I'm talking about at all? No. Not that I got showed to, because it's very, very funny. But it'll if you that would be like a good depiction of that, where that was the point when Hitler was in the bunker in those last days, when he still thought that he was winning, or that there was a chance that the Nazis could win, and he refused to accept that things had spiraled out of his control. You know, that's the type of rage that we're talking about when the Rasha like is forced to confront on some level the fact that he does not have the type of control that he seeks, and then that like shows. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned before with the Yashar, you said that is a certain type of personality. Are we reading that into this pasuk? We're trying to read it just like the stam reading of upright person without that personality.
I'm fine either way. If you want me to give you my the working definition of Yashar that we've developed in what do you call in my Monday night Mishlei this year, I can do that.
And what do you think is generally a better approach, to try to read it with that, or to just try to get a general reading, then if so also input that particular personality?
Yeah, it really has to. So this is a funny question. Whenever you see a Mishlei archetype presented for the first time in recent memory, you know, the question is, do you try to work out a definition from the pasuk itself? Okay, that's one option. Second option is to take a working definition that you have and plug it in, just to be able to maneuver, like just to be able to get some semblance, and then you could keep the flexibility in your mind to tweak it if need be. And then the third definition, which is very close to the third approach, which is very close to the second one, is to just make recourse to one of the meforshim on the pasuk. Meaning, when I say working definition, I'm saying take that from whatever your current understanding is in Mishlei as a whole. And then the third option is like look up a specific one of the meforshim on the pasuk and get it there. So David's question is like, what's the most advisable course? So Rabbi Moskowitz would always do the first approach. He would always say like work it out from the pasuk itself. I think that's a good impulse, because it'll force you to default to a bottom-up approach where you're like trying to like, you know, get things as organic as possible from the pasuk. Mm-hmm. The only problem is that I don't know if that's how Shlomo HaMelech intends it. Like like the more we've been learning this last year and a half, the more I'm realizing that, like, you know, he is kind of expecting you to have I don't know, learned the first part of Mishlei, like, you know, like like when we did, you know, that was one of the questions we asked on the Lates pasuk about why does Shlomo HaMelech define the Lates only in chapter 21 when he talked about Lates much earlier, you know? So I'm more sold on the idea that, like, he wants you to encounter and develop these ideas in a certain order. So now I really don't know what to think, you know? Like, I'm at the point where, so for me to plug in my definition, because we've been working on this for the first half of the year in our Monday night Mishlei shiur, for me, it's not an artificial plugging in, it's an organic plugging in, but for you guys, it would be an artificial plugging in. So the answer is, I don't know. I don't know what to do here, and I don't know what to do in general.
Sure.
I usually go based on my mood, you know, but I'll let the mood of the council dictate.
Sure.
I think maybe for our purposes, maybe I'll just tell you the basic definition. In fact, I'll do a little compromise. I'll show you in Rבינו Yona's writing, and then I'll basically say how we understood it. So this is Rבינו Yona on 10:3, sorry, 11:3. I feel like we have read this year actually in our morning shiur. Yeah, so he says, yeah, here we go, this paragraph. V'inyan Torah hayashar, the characteristic of a yashar is as follows. Ohev hayosher ubocher hatzedek v'hanachona. He loves uprightness, and he chooses what is tzedek and what is proper. Oh, by the way, sorry, side point, you know, I always struggle to have a good definition, a good translation of tzedakah and mishpat, according to the Rambam, and I finally found one in Jonathan Sachs's Haggadah. So he translates tzedakah and mishpat as distributive and retributive justice. So tzedakah is distributive justice, which means supplying people's needs, and mishpat is retributive justice of like punishment and reward. And I thought that was just like, you know, it doesn't have the eloquence of one word, but I always, you know, translating tzedakah as righteousness always has a little bit more of a religious connotation than what I prefer. And if you just say it means doing what's right, that kind of doesn't capture the idea of like a poseach hasidaka must be a l'chol chai ratzon. And it also doesn't point to system, but distributive justice really captures the idea of ensuring in a systemic way that everyone in the system gets what they need, you know? So I think that's a really good translation.
Wow, where did you find that?
Rabbi Jonathan Sachs in the Haggadah, in his Haggadah essays. Yeah, it's really nice. Cool. So this guy is Ohev Yosher, which he hasn't defined yet, and Bocher Hatzedek V'Hanachona. Uvichlal Torah Zeh, here's where he defines it. Shehu Makir HaYosher, he recognizes what is upright or straight. V'Nachon Levav B'Emes, and his mind is firm in the truth. You can't call someone a lover or a chooser of something unless he recognizes what is beloved and what is chosen. V'teva hayashar hanimsa bo, and the nature of the yashar that is found in him, kol shnei ele, is these two qualities. Okay, this is not the most eloquent Rבינו Yona, in my opinion. Shetuchnaso nota el hayosher b'chol divrei mechareha, that by disposition he is inclined towards what is upright in all of his investigations. Okay, his mechkar, his research, his analysis. The tavaso gamkin el hayosher nota v'nechsafa, and his desires are also towards what is upright, and also inclines towards what is upright and yearns for it. V'hashlemus be'ish, and perfection in a person, hakoach hachachma v'hakoach hamisava l'derech achas, is when his rational faculty and his appetitive faculty, his desires, are in line with each other. He derech hayosher, that's the way of uprightness. Okay, so that was very hard to understand what he means here. And he goes on at length for a couple more paragraphs, but that was the main paragraph. So the way we've understood it in our Monday night Mishlei shiur basically is that the yashar is his intuition in his intellect is honed and sharpened to the point where his mind is attracted towards what is right and rational and logical. And then on a moral or ethical perfection level, his emotions are also inclined towards what is in line with justice. So it's describing that basically he's drawn to what is right in his mind and towards what is right in action. And the difference between a yashar and a tzaddik is tzaddik puts the emphasis on his decisions and how he interacts with other people, whereas yashar is a quality of his internal perfections, about how he's oriented towards perfection, if that makes any sense. Like, in other words, like the full terms here are Rasha and tzaddik have to do with how you interact with the system. Yashar and boged are how you interact internally, like how your own like internal dynamics are in terms of like rationality and values, like irrespective of how it manifests itself outside. So that's not the smoothest definition, but just to plug it into our pasuk here. So Rasha is talking about how he interacts with people outside of himself. Yashar is talking about what's going on inside.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know if that helps at all, or if it makes things more confusing.
No, it's good to work with. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it would come out smoother than I thought, but it's actually been a couple months since we've actually done a pasuk in our Morning Mishlei shiur on with the Yashar. Can I do something? I'm going to do something that's unusual here. In my since we're almost at the end of today, in my high school Mishlei files, when I used to write up the 4-sentence summaries of each pasuk. Hold on just a second here. I thought I had. Oh, I guess I didn't. Hold on. I thought I had written this one up. Maybe I didn't. Just one second. Oh yeah. Okay, I did. So, so just since we only have like 2 minutes, I'll share what I came up with the last time I learned this. Here we're talking a long time ago. Okay, so I haven't read this yet since I wrote it. This must be like in 2013 or 2012. So here's what I wrote. A Rasha is someone who is driven to impose his egotistical vision onto reality through conscious, intelligent decision-making. Thus, within every Rasha is a latent brazenness which drives all of his action. And when the Rasha's plans are threatened, he will become enraged, and that brazenness will show itself on his face. So far, this is what Isaac and Sean said. And this is why I wanted to show you this, by the way. The Yashar will take this as a warning sign and will strive to analyze the Rasha's motives and plans in order to defend himself, for the Rasha will try to uphold his vision of reality at all costs. Unlike the animalistic anger of a fool, which is relatively simple, predictable, and avoidable, the anger of the Rasha is far more complex and dangerous and can only be guarded against after a thorough analysis. So that's how I interpreted it last time. So the first half is like almost exact. I mean, I think the first half is exactly what we've been saying up until now. But the chiddush is that I think the non-Yashar will look at the Rasha showing this brazenness and dismiss it or not take it seriously, because the Rasha is not doing anything. He's just like showing his brazenness. But the Yashar will be like, whoa. I know what the Rasha is capable of. I have to like take this seriously and analyze what's going on and try to understand his derech in order to try to preempt what's going to happen. Yeah, David?
This reminds me also, earlier in the year, we had a pasuk where the tzaddik feeds the Rasha something in some manner that then ends up destroying the Rasha too. So I know we're not working as much with the ksiv, but I mean, at least with יכין does have that same type of like, then this would be preparing some.
That'd be good. Okay, good.
That's
a nice, right. That's a nice ksiv thing, right? So in other words, with this idea, after the Yashar understands the Rasha's way, he should prepare his ways, meaning like his own ways, to try to like counteract what the Rasha is going to do.
Oh, I would think also both. I mean, there's same thing with the tzaddik where he can then set up these things for the Rasha to then like go over the top of this brazenness, and then he could like completely destroy it through
so I think we're saying the same thing, but the reason why I'm reading it as his own ways is because Hachana has more of a positive connotation of setting up for success. So I would feel like saying he sets up the Rasha's ways to be like a weird way to express it, whereas setting up like his own ways to defend against the Rasha, I think like just is a smoother read of the word Yakhin. But yeah, I hear. Okay, good. So let's stop here for today. And then tomorrow we will we'll start off in case with seeing if anyone has any other ideas on this pasuk, and then we'll go to the meforshim if not. Okay. Thank you, Sean and David, for setting up in yeshiva. Again, I'm really sorry I can't be there. It really annoys me. Like I really like being in person better, but you know.
It's okay.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. All righty. Have a good day. See you.
Thank you.
Thank you.